speak, you keep it off the record. Consequently, you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of 3-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bares their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it.
Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph R. Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights. Forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near. And all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark because you aren't, because we aren't. Perfect time for you to burn the bridge to self-forgiveness. Now's the chance, take a stand, stay your hand before you cast another vote for corporate interest. Another vote that chokes your hopes of owning your own home or opening a business. They love to say their hands were tied, the stars just weren't aligned for them to get their votes in line to see their promises delivered. But they killed it in an instant. Bills don't die by accident, they're all assassinated on behalf of the congressionally kismet. By some lobbyists who see themselves as agents of clandestine fate, not fences in a prison. Dealing in the stolen goods of sleeping slaves and trading on the futures of their children.
We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
We're live. We did it. We pressed the buttons.
We did it! Yay!
Yay!
We lost the Tommy somewhere. Yay!
Yay!
Everybody!
Run out.
Indie News Network, collaborative family of independent content creators.
It's American tradition. It's Indy. It's Jesse. What's up, everyone?
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Flight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
It's good to be here. Finally, I'm on Extra Bulla.
I'm Tatami of the YouTube channel Tatami's Diary.
Welcome to another episode of the show your parents warned you about. It's Reef After Dark.
This is Tatami Nation Politics.
Hey guys, this is Tommy, Tatami Nation Politics.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Politics is Survival.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine, and I'm very happy to be a founding member of INN.
Well, hi, everybody. It is, how do we miss that?
We're also available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Again, Spotify.
On Twitter and Instagram.
YouTube, Twitch, Odyssey, Facebook Live,
Discords and Telegram. And
Also on Amazon, Apple, Google Podcasts there also.
again, this is it. We use all these platforms to make sure that no one platform can shut us down. That's the other reason for diversification. They're trying to eliminate us.
It's kind of cool the way that these indie media networks, they operate differently than these other networks in that you're going to get honest opinions, you're going to get honest commentary because we're not sold out, but you're also going to get a lot of like unique personalities.
At Shutdown Amazon is now either co-opted or has explaining to do. In less than 1 month, he showed up to GQ, Teen Vogue, shaking Aunt POTUS's hand.
I still always like to say thank you and shout out the volunteers and the people that actually make this show happen.
I like it better than anything else.
Yeah, we know, Nancy. We know.
Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Free-thinking, innovative, and open-minded new independent progressive media.
We'll see you next time. This was the Politics of Survival.
You keep questioning everybody's motivations, and thank everybody for coming tonight, and we'll see you next week, and download the podcast. All right, everybody.
Don't vote Democrat.
Keep listening to what little birds have to tell you.
Please wash your ass.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?
Back at it again, fam. How are you?
Hey. You talking
Collin
to me or
has
talking to them?
Sure, either way. Collin figured he'd do a special little event for today since he has a real life and has a job, you know, in that real life, and decided he needs to do stuff for it.
Well,
So
I have to do stuff for it because my boss asked all of us to do it, and I have the platform to do it, and I can have a good reach to do it here. So I figured, you know, so it's a win-win because Reef has been wanting us to do more segments for INN News anyway. So you'll get me and him today, in addition to tomorrow. So just to clarify, we will be on our regularly scheduled programming for INN News tomorrow night at 9. But tonight, I want to talk to you about my other life, the life that pays the bills, but also my life in connection to the advocacy that I do in DC, which is called EmpowerEd. That's the organization that is run by teachers. My boss is a former teacher. And essentially, the organization exists to empower teachers to push for the changes that we need when, you know, corporations and people in power don't necessarily give that to teachers in our schools and our communities. So we are the voice, essentially, for teachers, but empowering teachers to do the same thing. So since today's Giving Tuesday, I'm asking kindly for any donation that you can towards the organization. So all money will go towards the organization as well itself, just so we're able to continue to do the organization work. We're able to continue to pay staff. I'm not on staff. Well, I am, but I'm not paid. Most of us aren't paid. This is something that we do out of the kindness of our hearts. But we're looking to expand, and we are looking for paid positions. But, you know, mostly, as you probably know, it takes a lot of work to do organization work, especially on the ground. So any support financially you can give. And if you decide to be a recurring donator, unfortunately, we have to use Facebook, but this is one of the more decent things that they're actually doing, they will match your donation up to $100, which is awesome. So we'll put, I think I put the link, the
In the
Facebook link up
description.
already.
I'm about to put it
The
in the
link is
chat.
also in the subscription as well. This fundraiser will go on till the end of the year, so you have till December 31st to give. Also, if you want to make it a tax write-off, you could think about that. But yeah, if you can't give, obviously we understand it's a hard time right now. You know, people are kind of struggling, you know, but I think just you being here, listening to these stories, keeping us company, hanging out, learning something, you know, especially for us, for me as a teacher on the field. Really just appreciate you guys being here, and to anyone else who's watching this after the fact. So, and please feel free in the chat if you have any specific questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability. That includes you, Reef. I know your mom's a teacher, so as well. So
yeah, my mom was teacher for, I mean, since I've known her pretty much. You know, I mean, I got dragged to the union meetings in a carrier as well. So, you know, been there, done that, tried to get raises that didn't happen. You know how it goes. So,
yeah.
But
so, yeah,
anyway,
feel free to ask questions within the chat. Keep in mind, obviously, this is a stream, obviously, that I'm representative of EmpowerEd. So there's going to be some things I cannot say fully, you know, just due to, obviously, you know, I want to be respectful of them and the organization. So, but I still want to be as truthful as possible in terms of, you know, the work that we're doing, the reality of what is happening, you know, for teachers in DC, and maybe for teachers, I'm sure, in your state or city going through similar stuff. You know, but just want to talk about it just as me in my teacher mode, advocacy mode, just what we've gone through over the last few months in part, but then like talking about what we EmpowerEd, and for me specifically, you know, what we're trying to do and what I've been thinking about in terms of what how I want to proceed for moving forward with the work that I'm doing this year in particular. So, should we get started?
I think so.
All right. So, hold on. Wait, where'd it go? Okay. So, wait a minute. Did I lose it?
Maybe.
I might. Wait, no. I think I lost the remote.
Cool.
So,
here, we'll do this. And then this.
Okay.
There you go. Try that.
Cool. All right. No, I think I have so many windows open that I forgot. Oh, yeah. So can you do it again?
Yes.
The numbers again? Okay. All right. Should work now.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, all right. So I'm actually going to refer to 3 articles that have been published in DC within the last few months. So this is the first one that we're going to look at. And actually, there is an update because this refers to, I might have mentioned this in past streams. In my school district, we haven't had a renewed contract in 3 years, almost 4. We have some news about that more recently within the last week that I will get to. But this was published actually not so long ago, like 2 weeks ago, written by Alex Coma. So in this article, it reads, "There's an end in sight for the lengthy contract fight between DCPS and the teachers union, but plenty of blood remains. The dispute has dragged on for more than 3 years, but arbitration could deliver some resolution." So actually, if you can, hold on, actually, I can do that.
You got it? There it is.
All right. The last time DC had an up-to-date contract with its biggest teachers union The Washington Nationals had yet to win the World Series. Lizzo's first single was still topping the charts, and hardly anyone had ever heard of COVID-19. The two sides have been negotiating ever since, with a resolution to the saga now increasingly likely to stretch into a fourth year of debate. The Washington Teachers Union and DC Public Schools have been fighting over a new collective bargaining agreement for so long that an independent arbitrator took over the matter last month, setting up an endgame for a dispute that has defined education politics in the district since the last contract expired in October 2019. But that has not ratcheted down tensions between Mayor Muriel Bowser and the union, deepening a political rift between two sides and heightening concerns that this unsettled labor situation is driving teachers out of the school system. A new contract would not only update salaries to account for 3 years of inflation, but it could also settle long-running arguments about working conditions at a time when teacher retention is broadly viewed as a major challenge for the district. So to continue, the parties could still come to their own agreement, but optimism for that outcome is low as a public war of words has escalated in recent weeks. The WTU, which represents roughly 5,000 DCPS teachers, has begun holding more frequent protests to demand an updated contract, with a city day of action planned actually 2 Thursdays ago. While Bowser and her deputies have only doubled down in their recent public comments blaming union leaders for denying rank-and-file educators a raise. It's much more likely that the arbitrator will decide the issue, taking several weeks to hear arguments and deliver a deal both sides must accept. You almost can't believe we're at this point to where an arbitrator is going to make a decision for something so important to our city, said Jacqueline Pogue Lyons, the WTU's president. I would have put money on it that we would have gotten a contract before the teachers left for the summer this year, and I was sadly disappointed. Claire Burke, an English teacher at Benjamin Banneker Academic High School, active in union organizing, shared Pogue Lyons' sense of frustration, but she at least feels relieved that there's an end in sight for teachers. And she is hopeful that whatever deal they strike will include both salary increases and back pay to account for the 3-year-long gap between pay raises. Every little increase is something because things are just that tight right now, she says. But neither side will reveal much about their negotiating positions, except for the broad outlines of the disagreements, so it's difficult to know for sure what a fireman agreement might look like. Representatives for Bowser's Deputy Mayor for Education and DCPS declined to comment on the labor dispute, but neither did refer loose lips to public remarks from both the mayor and DC Chancellor Louis Farabee. Just pause. Chancellor is what we call superintendent here. Suggesting that the union is to blame for this ongoing impasse. Bowser said during a November 7th press conference that we've put a great deal on the table that is fair and is needed, and the union simply needs to say yes. I want our teachers to have the back pay and the competitive raises that they deserve, Bowser said, but we need their leadership to say yes. We need at least a leader at the table that can say yes. If I'm at the table, I'm the yes for the US government, the DC government, sorry. We can't have a back and forth with a committee on the other side. I'm starting to think that the leadership of the Washington Teachers Union, because they can't agree with each other, they want to go to arbitration, and that's not fair to the teachers. That is going to delay them money. They should have their money right now. Farabee struck a similar tone in the November 3rd council hearing, telling Chairman Phil Mendelson that he believes WTU's bargaining team has not represented the DCPS offer to its full membership, and if they had, their members would overwhelmingly support what we have on the table. Pogue Lyons sees these arguments as disingenuous, part of an effort to craft a narrative about greedy teachers who simply won't accept a good deal. She can't understand why the mayor suggested the WTU leaders would prefer arbitration. She is adamant that the union doesn't support this option, as the full membership won't get to vote on the agreements the arbitrators draw up, and believes that the last DCPS offer substantially falls short of what teachers are demanding. Though she won't share exact details, and by law she can't, Pogue Lyons says her main sticking point with DCPS has not only been around salaries, but other issues like benefits, planning time, and working conditions, a particularly salient matter with COVID-19 still disrupting things. She notes that a survey of teachers the union conducted in September found that 79% of responders weren't satisfied with conditions in DCPS, and 62% believe things had changed for the worse in the last 3 years. We're hearing more and more teachers say things like, without a contract, I don't feel respected enough to do this job every day, especially with the work changing so substantively in the last few years, says Scott Goldstein, a former DCS teacher and executive director of the advocacy group EmpowerEd. We've had an enormous amount of turnover even when we did have a teacher contract. That is the bare minimum we need to do. Farabee acknowledged some of those challenges in the council hearing, which was convened specifically to focus on teacher retention after recent reports showed that DC far outpacing the national average of staff attrition rates. But he also said that the fact that we have one of the highest paid school districts in the region certainly helps with recruitment and retention. However, Goldstein is quick to note that the district's high teacher salaries are a bit of a mirage, considering the city's cost of living. A recent Wallet Hub study found that DC ranked 47th in the nation for annual teacher salaries when adjusted for cost of living expenses. He sees this attitude from DCPS leadership a part of a broader problem, with top officials refusing to acknowledge salient concerns from teachers and addressing those with a reasonable contract offer. What I'm hearing from teachers is that they don't feel that DCPS is negotiating in good faith, said Ward 1 State Board of Education Rep Emily Gassoy, who has worked with her colleagues to elevate teacher retention issues over the last few years and advocate for a resolution to the contract dispute. Because they feel like there's no union that would take 3 years to negotiate contracts unless the offers were completely unacceptable. Pokeline agrees, seeing a complete lack of urgency from DCPS on the issue, because if there was urgency, we wouldn't be doing this for 3 years. Bowsers and Farabee have disputed this point repeatedly, noted that DCPS negotiators have met weekly with union leaders since an old ordeal lapsed, but the union has questioned the seriousness of those discussions when top leaders have frequently skipped meetings. Mendelsohn raised that point with Farabee directly during the hearing, saying he's heard the chancellor has barely attended these sessions. Farabee countered that he's had many conversations with the bargaining team and WTU leadership at the table with their members. The law allows for either side to move negotiations along more quickly, Mendelsohn observed. Management could have forced a resolution of the bargaining 2 years ago, and you didn't. Farabee said in response that he thought that we were going to reach an agreement, and that's why we stayed on the path we were on. The chancellor added that he would still be happy to put the decision makers in a room to avoid arbitration, and subsequently wrote on Twitter that the two sides planned to resume bargaining 2 weeks ago. He added, however, that he was surprised to see the union organizing protests for that very same day. Laura Fuchs, the WTU secretary and one of its more pugilistic public faces, replied that your team has not been negotiating in bad faith, while the mayor lies about it for 3 years, so it's time for more action to get this to actually work. Plainly, there's bad blood on both sides after years of stalled negotiations and some bruising battles over COVID protocols at the height of the pandemic. And Bowser has never been especially close with the union, given her strong support for mayoral control of schools and the WTU's rejection of that governance model. The two sides have frequently sparred politically over 2 terms as well, with the union most recently endorsing at-large councilmember Robert Wright's primarily challenge against Bowser, in addition to backing Bowser's antagonistic at-large councilmember Alyssa Silverman. So it's probably no great surprise that things have gone so ugly or that arbitration will be necessary to resolve this matter. Pokeline said she's been told that the process won't stretch much longer than 45 days, but the holidays could well delay things. Bowser's Labor Relations Director Lindsay Maxwell told the Council Committee on November 3rd that he doesn't expect there's going to be a resolution before the end of the calendar year. Whenever the matter gets resolved, Pokeline fully expects that the union will be turning it around and doing this again soon afterward. The WTU won't know how long its new deal is good for until the arbitration process plays out, so it's very possible they'll be negotiating another contract before too long. We seem to have a problem here selling contracts in a timely manner, she says, and then we wonder why we have a high turnover of teachers. Goldstein is hopeful that a new contract will buy some time for the council to take action on more systemic issues affecting teachers at least, like helping DCPS offer more flexible work schedules or reforming its teacher assessment system, which has been widely criticized for its racial biases. He's explicitly optimistic that the new council will be to be seated in January will be more attentive to these concerns, since its two new additions, Matt Furman in Ward 3 and Zachary Parker in Ward 5, both have backgrounds in education advocacy. After 14 years from working for DCPS, Burke finds it a bit difficult to share that optimism. From protracted contract disputes to fights about COVID safety, Burke says she sees a clear pattern in how DCPS treats its teachers. People are more aware of these issues and starting to talk about it, but actual change is probably not around the corner, Burke says. So yeah, so the long of it is, DCPS has been in dispute for his contract for 3 years, and there's a lot of he said matters that are coming into it, and that's where I come in. So really, essentially, my job, just for those of you, just to give you an idea, so my job in the organization is once a month we meet, we discuss, mostly what are the top issues that we can do some advocacy around. And oftentimes it could look like, for me, meeting with the state board and having, and speaking to them, like I have to write I have to write stuff for them to kind of share at the monthly meetings. I don't have to do that all the time, but many of us within EmpowerEd do that. It could also be inviting teachers to discuss about topics that we're working on. One of the big things that we're working on is teacher retention. Obviously, in the article it mentioned, that DCPS, it's true that DCPS teachers on average are well paid, I would say relatively, for teachers, but teachers are leaving the profession in the district at an alarming rate. And I think especially since COVID, we've been leaving a lot higher compared to other urban districts. So the argument is, if you give teachers more money, or if we offer them money, that they will stick around. But obviously, teachers are leaving, so you can also make the conclusion. So it's not just the money. So if the money is not necessarily keeping teachers, what is it? And so that's one of the things as far as teacher retention that we are studying and kind of looking at to see, okay, we know why teachers are leaving. A lot of it could deal with, poor conditions in schools aside. Our assessment system has been ridiculed. I don't like it particularly, but it does have a bias. I will get to that in another article. Not necessarily feeling that they're supported in their work. And I think for what I'm working on specifically is tying that to professional development, that we don't have opportunities to kind of say, these are the type of opportunities or professional development opportunities that we need to ensure that our students are getting what they need in context of their grade or in context of their school or in context of their community. We don't really have much of a say in that. So those are just a couple of things, but those are the things that we kind of work on that we help to elevate to, more on a local level. So it could be getting involved with the media, obviously getting involved with the state board, making relationships, obviously, since we're in schools, talking to, our staff and kind of asking them what they think. And the good thing about EmpowerEd is that we have 8 wards in the district. So we try to get a representative from each ward. Yeah, ideally. And then obviously having public and charter schools represented within the organization each year. So we get a diverse group of thought, different types of schools, different types of, especially given socioeconomic status, like different needs depending on the school and depending on the ward. So obviously we all have to kind of come together in light of, all these issues that may be specific in our schools and maybe in our wards, but kind of coming together and kind of figuring out what are the patterns that teachers are saying, what are the main concerns, and uplifting those, to kind of make those pushes, as far as policy, eventually for the mayor, and then obviously with the WTU, to kind of push for. So
what
so
would you want
doing a
them
lot of,
to push? I mean, you talked a lot about like what specifically do you want to see changed in those situations?
so basically my wish list.
Yeah.
I think I will get to it at the end, but I think I'll go more to it at the like toward the end of the stream. But and I thought a lot about this, I think, and again, I want to thank you and Indy for this. I think especially being on INN News and obviously listening to you guys for How Do You Miss That, talking a lot about labor, talking a lot about, and we talk regularly about how labor can seize the means of production. And we've talked about this, I think, off camera, but like, what does that look like in education? What would it look like in terms of having teachers seize the means of production? And I think for me, and I'll just give a personal anecdote, given where I'm at, and my ward is one of the more, if probably not the most affluent. So, and I'll say this, especially with my grade and just the type of school that I'm at, I have a lot of freedom in terms of what what I teach my kids. I don't have a set curriculum that I teach them. I basically go off of what they tell me that they want to learn. And as I say that, I realize the privilege that I have in saying that and being able to teach that way. I know a lot of schools, especially if they're more lower income, do not have that privilege. But I believe personally that, especially if you are a veteran teacher at a school, you should have more say to kind of, you have the experience because you're with your students every day. You know what they need. You know what your community needs. You know what your families are looking for. So for me, my goal, my dream, my wish on my wish list is to have having teachers have the autonomy to kind of say, this is what my students need due to this, and this. And I want to work to ensure that my students are meeting this, and this. And I will talk, due to speaking with my parents, due to speaking with my colleagues, due to speaking with the community, and trying to create a plan for me that I'm able to meet those certain benchmarks so that I'm able to effectively teach my students. See, right now, and I think in the article, there is manual control, basically, essentially, in a way, I will say it in this way, our mayor is basically the CEO of DCPS in terms of she has the final say of what happens, and then everything just kind of trickles down essentially from her. Whereas I want it to be a bottom-up approach in terms of teachers in schools collaborating and having their voices heard and elevating it up to ideally the state board, having them have more authority and oversight, because they really act in DC as an advisory role. They can make suggestions, but ultimately, they don't have any power, unfortunately. Like all of that eventually goes up to the mayor. But it's the idea of the mayor having the final say in everything. If she doesn't particularly want anything, she can say no. She can have certain things in a certain way. So right now, it's kind of a bottom top-down approach. I like it to be a bottom-up approach in terms of having teachers have more of that autonomy of what they need in their classrooms and schools to elevate and advocate for.
Well,
if
I
that
think,
makes sense.
You've turned me on to Kwame Ture a few times here in the last year, and he talks about you have to take the power back for yourself quite frequently. How do you think like teachers in the DC area do that?
Taking power back?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I want to be very careful in what I say. But I will say my union, in my opinion, has not necessarily. I will say this. I would have liked them to push that idea of teachers having leverage in terms, especially with our contract, because our mayor got reelected a few weeks ago. So I felt like a lot of this push was had maybe within the last month or so, prior, when I think that should have been ongoing. Like really over maybe probably the past year, I would say realistically, since we've been back in school in person, more fully since 2021 for most of us. So I felt like, and by then, we've had a contract expired for over a year and a half, close to 2. So I felt more that pressure should have started back then in terms of, leading up to the election. But the idea that, having teachers know that your voice is more valid now because you're actually in a state of leverage, given, you're looking for a new contract and Bowser's need to be reelected. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but you can probably fill in the gaps because I trust you all are very smart. I wish there was a lot more of that teacher voice there versus just a few voices kind of making on teachers' behalf, which may or may not necessarily be indicative of the reality that's happening in schools in the district. So I think just really more of that elevation of teacher voices versus just a few people who might be connected to teachers. And they could have good things to say, and often is often right, but it may not be fully the experience of what teachers are experiencing or dealing with that may not be highlighted. So, having more opportunities to share the fullness of what is happening. So then, especially with our mayor, like she has no choice but to respond. But I think right now, I don't feel like that really happened. And I'll get to this in a minute, just as a quick update. As of, when was it? Tuesday, we got essentially a tentative deal. I have to go for the contract. They said hopefully by the end of the week we should get it, just so we can look at it to see what's in there. But I'm worried about it. I'm very worried about what, might be cut, in terms of our control, and then what bargaining chips are we losing possibly in terms of getting the money that they say that we're owed, because as I said, it's not about the money, the money is not keeping teachers. So, and that's what we're looking at in EmpowerEd, is figuring out what are those other factors that teachers are leaving and what can be changed so that they have a more satisfactory experience and they want to stay. But yeah, I think essentially that would be my wish list.
Speaking of empowered ed, we should probably show people where that is and where we could find it again, especially for clip purposes. And I'm putting that donation link in the chat as well. We definitely can't seize power back without a war chest. So, any money you can give would be appreciated.
And like I said, again, just to be transparent, I don't get any of that money directly. All that money goes towards the organization. And we will accept money up until December 31st. Any amount you can give, could be as little as $1, will be a huge help. But like I said, if you can't give any money, just watching this stream will be, that is going to be helpful to me. So, but again, I appreciate you guys, and your support in this community. and being willing to listen to, my stuff that directly impacts me, but I think especially being in independent media, just the realization of knowing more readily, the actions, on the federal level ultimately trickle down to the local level. And so a lot of this stuff, that we're talking about on the federal level ultimately affects me. So, and especially in education, like these are the things that I'm dealing with, but I'm doing my part, or at least trying to make a stand against that and trying to have other teachers do the same thing. So I'm very
EmpowerEd, right? This is their website, I think.
Yep.
Cool. I think we have the link in the description for this. If people want to click that, show more.
So yeah, if you want to learn more about us and more specifically what we do and some of the our agenda, as you can see on the screen here, definitely check it out. And like I said, any donation to help us to continue doing the work in DC and maybe even get more people on board, will be helpful. But shall we continue?
Yeah, we can do that. Let me get back to the tab.
All right. So like I said, we do have an update because that article was written over 2 weeks ago. And as I said, as of last week, after a 3-year impasse, DC Public Schools reached a tentative agreement with the teachers union. So this article was written by Colleen Grablick, and Sarah Kim. So here, work.
Yep.
There we go. After more than 3 years of stalled negotiations, DC Public Schools have reached a tentative contract agreement with the Washington Teachers Union, according to a statement from DC Mayor Emilio Bowser on Wednesday. Today, we are proud to reach an agreement that delivers robust back pay in recognition of the tireless efforts and sacrifice our teachers have made over the past 3 years, reads Boutman's statement on the agreement, which spells out a 12% increase in salary over 4 years and a 4% retention bonus. This agreement provides our educators with competitive raises that will help the district to retain and attract the best talent for our schools. The news of the agreement comes less than a week after teachers held demonstrations at least 5 different schools, demanding a contract providing fair wages and fair working conditions, meaning more staffing, smaller class sizes, and guaranteed lesson planning times. WTU President Jacqueline Polk Lyons did not immediately return DCist WAMU's inquiries. The WTU tweeted that in addition to the 12% salary increase and 4% signing bonus, the contract included a significant increase in administrative premiums or negotiated compensations for teachers in the union. According to DCPS Chancellor Louis Farabee, it also includes retroactive back pay for teachers who worked through the pandemic. There are many more details we'll share soon, so please keep an eye out, reads the tweet. We are thankful for you, for your letters and calls to our mayor, and for waking up early with us to march. And we are thankful for a fair contract. After 3 years of unsuccessful negotiations, DCPS entered an arbitration process in October and returned to the bargaining table last Thursday. Because contract negotiations are confidential, union leaders are not able to share the details of the city's proposed agreement. That's what we're going to be looking at, hopefully by the end of this week, to vote on. The tentative agreement still needs to be voted on by members of the unit and then sent over to the DC Council for approval. Bowser and DCPS Chancellor Louis Farabee have pointed the finger at WTU leadership for long-stalled negotiations, arguing the city had put fair offers on the table and the union's reluctance to accept them kept raises out of the teachers' pockets. As DCPS teachers, a 5,000-some strong group, went on without contract in the last 3 years, educators faced a sea of challenges, from COVID-19 and remote learning to school reopenings to short staffing. A September WTU survey found that 4 in 5 DC teachers are unhappy with their jobs and nearly half plan to leave their roles in the next few years. I was one of them. Ruth probably remembers that over the spring.
Yep.
Farabee, in an interview with DCist and WAMU on Wednesday afternoon, said he is excited about the prospects of a ratified contract and pinned the sluggish negotiations on pandemic interruptions. During the pandemic, the WTU and the school system spent time negotiating in terms of DCPS COVID response in memorandums of agreement, and Farabee says this delayed talks. We spent significant time, I would say, on what was important at that moment, Farabee said. We now transition from that time period. We're in a different day. I'm confident that we have not had the challenges of the pandemic and had to work through two MOAs on that topic, we would have been here sooner than where we are today. Clara Burke, an English teacher at Benjamin Banneker High School, has not seen the tentative agreement yet by last week, but told DCist WAMU she's glad an agreement had been reached. It's just nice to be done, said Burke. I'm super excited about finally having a deal. A group EmpowerEd applauded the tentative agreement on Wednesday, which we worked on quickly while we were on break, calling the 3 years that DCS operated without contract embarrassing. We said it will continue to work with lawmakers and the city's education officials to advance reforms in DC schools, and also called attention to wages of the city public charter school teachers, which very quickly, on average, they get paid way less and generally work more hours and days than public school teachers do. So this was our statement that we made to the press. And I believe Scott did tweet this out. We're thrilled for the new contract, but so much more is required to retain our teachers. Here is our statement. As we approach Thanksgiving, we are grateful for the news that, at long last, DCPS teachers have a tentative contract. A raise in wages and a fair contract is at the very least owed to our phenomenal educators who have done so much to serve our students and families over the past few years. Now it's time for city leaders to finally address the root causes of DC's teacher turnover crisis. Even before the contract lapse, DC has had the highest teacher turnover rate in the country, far exceeding the urban district average and destabilizing our schools. We are ready to work with the Deputy Mayor of Education, members of the DC Council, DCPS, OSSI, and all other stakeholders to advance meaningful reforms that will recruit, support, and retain a diverse workforce for years to come. As the workforce changes and teachers continue to leave the profession at alarming rates, this requires urgent attention. We also stand with our DC public charter school teachers today, too many of whom are still underpaid, as well as our paraprofessionals and teacher aides across sectors who make demoralizing low wages. The fact that DCPS teachers went 3 years without a contract is an embarrassing statement of values. We know how to retain teachers. We need to reduce this emphasis on standardized testing, move from a punitive evaluation system to a growth-based system. That's actually more of what I'm working on specifically. Invest in implementing flexible scheduling, provide mental health days, fund educator wellness, invest in grow your own pathways, provide opportunities for Black and Latina educators to be in leadership, provide student loan relief, help teachers afford to live in DC, and more. The hashtag teacher solutions are there. Now we need political will and from DC's leaders to get it done. So that was our statement that we made to the press last week. And this is a statement from Matt Ferrand, who is my new ward representative. And he said, I'm delighted that Mayor Bowser and WTU teacher have reached a tentative contract agreement. I look forward to the vote by the WTU membership and, if approved by members, to swift action by the council. It is critical that we treat our teachers with fairness and respect. So I won't read that, but you basically get the idea. Yeah. So as I said, I don't know what's in the contract yet. Before we went live, I tried to get on our union town hall, virtual town hall, to learn more about what's in it. We'll get more specifics of it, hopefully by the end of the week, that we get to vote on I assume next week.
Hmm.
But like I said, I will admit I am a little worried about what's in it because it does seem like there's a lot of emphasis on the money, which great, obviously, given that we're inflation right now, DC is expensive. Teachers need that money, like I'm glad that's there. But I do have to wonder, and funny enough, this is what a lot of teachers are saying, what's missing or what is not in the contract that we would be losing in order to get this deal. So I'm already beginning to hear that from teachers. So that I think that is a genuine concern because, because again, the idea is for me that they're overstaying, like, oh, teachers are getting more wages. Great. But what are the things that are going to connect to students' progress in schools? That's what I'm interested in knowing, if there's anything in the contract related to that. Or like, what are your plans to retain the teachers who are there? Because as I said, even though we get paid relatively well, teachers are still leaving at a high clip. So that's what concerns me in terms of what may or may not be mentioned in this contract. But like I said, I don't know what's in it yet. Like maybe I can give an update at some point to kind of let you know what's not everything, but at least essentially what's in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
What would you
basically we do.
To go back to a
Go
story
ahead.
I asked earlier? I mean, what should be on it? What do you want on it?
Well, here's the thing, like, and I thought about this maybe last week because I think just overall, like, parents, when they talk about teaching, can talk about it in a way like, oh, all teachers, I think especially when it comes to unions, it's like, oh, all teachers want is money. Which I wouldn't say that. I don't think that's entirely fair because at any other job, you're expected, if you do have good performance, to get a raise. So for any job, that's a minimal expectation. But what I would like to hear more is what are schools and teachers getting for them to be able to do their jobs? And this is kind of what we shared as EmpowerEd, what we would like, to be included in the contract. Like, what are you doing to promote leadership, especially for teachers of color? What are you doing to promote, high school students and paraprofessionals to become teachers within the district, rather than, not to say you can recruit out, to get teachers, but I think it's something to be said to have a paraprofessional grow into the role and being able to stay, or having like high school students, being trained into college, being teachers and coming back into the district being teachers. That's also something to be said. For me personally, like the idea, as I said, having teachers having autonomy on what their professional development looks like, and being able to take the training or the classes or having the professional development that meets the needs of their schools. That's what I would love to see in the contract. Don't think a lot of that is going to be in there. But that gives us a lane, to kind of talk about these things. And I think, I think again with the money, I think especially with, right now where, inflation and all of that, there are a lot, like, I think generally people will be more sympathetic to teachers getting raises in a way that hasn't happened before, because of COVID, which fine. But if we were to go pre-pandemic, I think what would have helped parents especially feel like, okay, like I understand why teachers are getting this money, say, is because there's actually tangible stuff that their children will benefit from. So like, what are you doing in terms of, ensuring that students are getting the best teaching that they can get? What are you doing to ensure that teachers stay at their schools and are actually encouraged to do well? Those are the things I think generally parents, and I think those of you in the chat or are a parent, actually you can share that. Like, what would you want? Like, what do you in your mind would be a good school to you? What would a school that is doing well look like to you? And I think for me, ultimately, parents want to know when their children feel safe at their school, that they have teachers that they can trust who have longevity, that know them, and know the family, that, you have that rapport with them, but are constantly learning and growing and getting trained in more up-to-date practices that would better help and educate their kids. Like, I don't really hear that much of those conversations at all necessarily in the public discourse. It's usually always about the money and maybe secondary to that benefits, but nothing really specific in terms of like, what are the teachers doing or what are the teachers working on to help the students in their classrooms? But, as Anna says, that's not sexy. So, but again, that gives us room in EmpowerEd to kind of talk about those issues and talk about them more in the media so that we can bring attention to those issues.
Cool. I put the donation link in chat again. If people want to go support that, you should find that. And we probably I should press this button, which is, I put it at that one, so I could go to the next tab.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. And then I could do this. See, this is the group. Look at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was from last year, so it's not a current group now, but at least many of our past warriors in the field who might have moved on for due to different things, but but I think one thing I've definitely enjoyed about being in EmpowerEd is the people. I think it helps. I don't have many opportunities to go to other schools or meet teachers at other schools, so this is like one of my ways that I'm able to do that, but also get to learn like what's happening at my schools. Because like I said, my school has different needs, or like in a lot of ways privileges that my other colleagues may not necessarily have. So, but talking about those things, and this is kind of where we talk a lot about organizing, like this is a part of that. This is a huge part of that. Like we are aligned in some ways, but depending on what schools we are at, like we run a gamut from like schools like mine that have more of an affluent bend to it, just due to where I work, to more on the opposite side of that, where it's low income or might be a Taiwan school when they're not have the same privileges that I do. So they obviously have different needs, and obviously, we can tend to kind of butt heads on certain issues, but we have to kind of come together to figure out what will work for the benefit of all, if not most of the students, all students and teachers in the district. That, so I love that kind of solidarity, but I think it forces me to kind of put what we kind of talk about in independent media as far as, I don't want to say reaching across the aisle, but talking to people who might think differently from you or have a different perspective from you, but being able to hear that. And sometimes those conversations are very tough to hear, but finding that common ground and kind of being like, okay, but this is kind of where we align. This is where we agree. Let's work on this in terms of making it an agenda point that we can focus on. So I think that's what I really appreciate about it. And I think in a lot of ways kind of prepare me for being in independent media. Just having the opportunity to be in a safe space where we're able to kind of challenge each other in that way, but finding common ground where we find that solidarity to move forward in some type of agenda push for certain topics. And so like, I think a lot of this work that I do now has really been I feel like it's kind of been more of a back and forth. You know, the stuff that I learned from INN News, or what, you know, our audience brings to me, or what you and Indy talk about with me off camera, I've brought to EmpowerEd. Hell, I've brought Kwame to EmpowerEd. Like, I bring him everywhere. But like,
You need like a plushie
you know,
of Kwame Ture. You just need like, you know.
Yes, I do.
Or
Yeah,
like a cardboard cutout. You know, like a giant
Right.
cardboard cutout, life size.
Yeah. But I love the reciprocation that I'm able to have from independent media to my work, to my advocacy work, and vice versa. You know, so I think it's definitely helped kind of prepare me for this, but in turn, in light of what you guys have talked about, especially within labor, has made me think more. And I know you know this because I talked to you about it. Like, it's helped reshape some of my thinking around what's possible in education and what I can advocate better for in terms of what we do. So I think I have one more one more article that I want to read, and it kind of so it kind of goes into a little bit more specifics, you know, of I think some more realities of just how hard this industry, this work can be, and then more specifically what we have said or continue to say to kind of add to the wish list of what we would like to see happen in our schools. So if you can get back to the slide.
Yep.
Here we go. Yeah, I'll go back. So, so this article, again, written by Sarah Y. Kim from DCist, written in September. DC schools are losing educators and teachers have solutions. So again, I think just as I said, instead of looking to lobbyists and all these higher ups that are talking down to teachers, but listening to the teachers and having them offer suggestions. That's kind of what we do in EmpowerEd, which is cool. So the first days of school are finally feeling back to normal for English teacher Clara Burke. Burke, who teaches at Benjamin Banneker High School in Ward 2, says her students are able to sit in small discussion groups again. With vaccines available for children 6 months and older, she's no longer agonizing over strict seating charts, which kept students physically distanced and helped with contact tracing. Reduced case numbers means that she isn't constantly worried about pivoting to remote learning due to a sudden COVID-19 outbreak. My own kids, they woke up on day 2 and they were like, "We love school and can't wait to go back," she says. It's lots of joy and learning happening already. Humanities teacher Brittany Richardson says there's a lot of positivity at the Center City Public Charter School in Petworth. This year has so far, knock on wood, been amazing, she says. We're all just relieved last year's over and ready to start fresh. As grateful as teachers are for these signs of normalcy, for many DC teachers, normal needs to change. Since well before the pandemic, local teachers have complained of high turnover rates, brutal working hours, and an evaluation system that many described as punitive. Not only are these problems still ongoing, the pandemic has made some of them worse. DC is projected to have higher teacher turnover than the vast majority of states and some of the worst pay in the country given the cost of living, according to a Wallet Hub study issued earlier this week. The study ranks DC 48th among states in projected teacher turnover and finds it the third worst state to teach in. Schools are dealing with significant vacancies at the beginning of the school year, according to Fraser O'Leary Jr., a teacher and member of the DC State Board of Education representing Ward 4. He says that local teacher turnover is only getting worse and that he would be surprised if fewer than 25% of DC teachers have left their roles or quit teaching altogether since the last school year, based on conversations he's had with educators and vacancy estimates from the city. This year has been precipitous in the decline of teacher retention, he says. From everything I hear from principals and teachers throughout the city, there's a sea change in the number of teachers who aren't coming back. The state board conducted a survey of DC teachers in March 2021 and found that 43.4% said they considered quitting teaching due to the stresses of the pandemic. The frustrating thing for a lot of us is we saw this coming, said Scott Goldstein, the executive director of EmpowerEd. We've been saying for the past couple of years that this is going to happen, and if we don't make the job more flexible, if we don't focus on wellness, and that we're going to face these shortages and the students will pay the price. And here we are. Before the pandemic hit, DC schools were already experiencing high teacher turnover. A July 2021 report by the State Board of Education shows an annual teacher attrition rate of about 25% for 6 years in DCPS and charter schools, higher than the pre-pandemic and national average of 16%. Whether COVID-19 has dramatically driven down teacher retention in DC is not yet clear. While retention did drop after the pandemic began, there isn't public data yet for this year's teacher workforce from the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, also known as OSSE. Not every school is necessarily feeling the weight of low staffing. Dominique Moore, a fifth grader sped teacher, says John Hayden Johnson Middle School in Ward 8 seems pretty well staffed and that teachers there seem energized as the school year gets underway. Across the district, however, Moore said morale is waning. People who are at this point are still teaching are really doing it for the love of teaching, for the love of kids and fostering the next generation, Moore says. They always expect us to do more with less. Brad Thompson, he's actually one of my colleagues at EmpowerEd, a world history teacher at Theodore Roosevelt High School, says last year was the most challenging school year of his tenure as a teacher. He was covering 3 periods on average each week in addition to his regular teaching load. This year, his 11th as a teacher is looking better thanks to some added support staff, though they're still contending with ongoing vacancies. We're missing the Spanish teacher and a few other teachers, and every period a teacher has to cover that class, he says, which eats into their prep time. What's probably the biggest issue, Thompson says, is that classes have ballooned dramatically in size due to staff shortages. His classes have upwards of about 30 students enrolled. Last year, he had about 22 per class. Personnel staff at DCPS central offices has been temporarily filling teacher vacancies across the district. Margaret Thomas, a special education teacher at Dunbar High School in Ward 5, says it's the first time her school has ever resorted to these measures. Thomas says teachers and administrators at her campus have also spent the first weeks of school scrambling to onboard new teachers and finishing the hiring process for others. Moore says several teachers across the district, including a colleague, had dealt with delays in their offer letters and onboarding in the first weeks of school due to staff shortages at the DCPS central office. DCPS Chancellor Louis Farabee says these delays are in fact the result of a competitive hiring environment for teachers. Many educators received multiple offers as the new school year approached, and decisions were often made later than usual, which impacted our hiring timelines, Farabee wrote in a statement to DCist WAMU. DCPS is experiencing the effects of a nationwide teacher shortage, Farabee says. But this year, thanks to new recruitment and retainment initiatives, DCPS saw an increase in its teacher recruitment pool, according to Farabee. The district is planning to expand its substitute teaching contracts to alleviate the strain for school with vacancies, he says. So I actually want to stop here and talk about that for a second. Again, what Farabee is talking about here is, for what I understand, new teachers, at least this year, were given a signing bonus in order to work in the district, which, to my knowledge, has never happened before. So again, it's kind of talking about the money, enticing, oh, we offer this much a year and, you get the signing bonus. Obviously, especially if you're a new teacher, that's going to sound great, right? Especially coming on. But again, the idea is, as the article said, we're higher than average as far as teachers leaving, the district. So while teachers might come for the money, they're not staying because in spite of it, So again, and I think you're hearing this common theme. It's like the money. We offer a lot of money. The money is good. DCS is a good thing. I hear that a lot, but it's not like, what are you doing within the district that makes it good without money aside? I don't necessarily hear that. And so, and I'll get into more of what we're talking about, but that's a narrative that I hear all the time. It's just like, we offer great pay and we'll give you a bonus, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, nothing in terms of we're able to retain teachers due to great professional development, or like we ensure that classes are low so that you are able to have that attention, so your students are able to have that attention, or we have a diverse, you know, workforce, you know, many of them who have lived in DC and are continuing at the schools that they were a student. Like, all these things matter, you know, like in terms of parents having confidence in the school system. And again, yeah, you don't hear that. You don't hear of these other things, but instead you hear the money. And I think that's where I understand with parents, they get the frustration, or kind of being like, especially in connection with the union, oh, teachers only care about is the money, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I get.
Speaking of, John Chaos in the chat asks, I wonder what Colin would think of teachers unions hijacking the charter school movement by demanding that their pension funds be used to buy controlling ownership and run it as a teacher co-op.
Teacher unions hijacking. Huh. That's an interesting thought.
I mean, essentially they would have to strike, gain power, and then get
right, but
like shareholder rights, essentially.
Yeah, but the problem is with that, and in many states, I think it's only like 39 states, you know, teachers are not able to strike.
Well,
I'm not able to strike, you know. So where you heard protests, quote unquote, you know, like we can't like walk out of school being like, we're going on strike now, you know, like we can't do that. So, but that's an interesting idea. And I don't want to knock charter schools because they have their place, you know, but often not for charter schools, and it depends on the school. But I do think, you know, they focus heavily on the academics to the point where and it makes sense because in order to keep their charter, they have to make sure that they meet certain standards.
Yeah.
But often than not, depending on the state, there may not be that accountability to ensure that their students are doing well. Like DC, I think it's better. I think generally in the Northeast is better at that. In the South, it's not, or in the Midwest, that's not always the case. You know, you hear a lot of charter schools being shut down because, you know, like their accountability is often more lax depending on the state. So I'm not sure if doing that's going to work everywhere, but I do think it's an interesting idea. And I think basically, you know, talking about in terms of a teacher co-op, again, I don't think, and as I said, I thought about this a lot, but having teachers own the rights to production, again, I think that can happen in the public school environment if teachers are able to kind of say, this is the kind of curriculum that I want to teach due to this, this, and this. And in collaboration with my staff, with my principal, with my community, these are the things that we want to focus on. So, but again, having more of that teacher voice to be able to say, you know, like these are the things in light of taking, and obviously taking the data and whatever, but after that being like, in light of what I see within my school, with my grade or my class, this is what I want to work on. These are the goals I'm setting for myself, you know, in terms of, you know, I want my students to do this, and this is how I plan to get there. These are the professional development I'm seeking, or can you help me find some training or professional development that's going to meet these needs. Again, I think having more of that say within a public school environment, I don't think it's, honestly, it is a lot to ask, but I don't think it's far off the mark. You do that in a public corporation, in a private corporation. Like, often than not, when you meet with your boss, you talk about, like, what you need to do in order to improve, and you collaborate with your boss on what that is. You don't necessarily get that in schools. It's often told to you, depending on the district, what you're supposed to do, which may or may not always align with your values or what your classes need or what your school needs. So I think having a lot more autonomy in there, to me, would be kind of the equivalent of a co-op. But honestly, I thought about that too, but I haven't really figured out more of what that would look like, honestly. But I have thought about that in terms of, you know, how can teachers have more control over in terms of what's happening in schools.
Gotcha. Is there more to that article, I think?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I think I read the whole thing.
Pretty sure. You would remember more
Yes,
than me.
I read the whole thing. Yeah, I read the whole thing. So, okay. Moving on. This is a crisis long in the making that parents and students are really feeling the effects of now, Goldstein says. The shortage that everyone is experiencing around the country is compounding a problem that was already stark in DC. With COVID-19 waning, he says, now is the time for change. The solutions are becoming not only more clear, but more exciting. So this is the stuff that we're working on. 1, reforming the teacher schedule. As much as virtual teaching was a nightmare, Goldstein says it gave some teachers a taste of greater flexibility with options to spend more time with family. Thompson, for example, says he got to do a 4-day teaching week using the 5th day to create his own work schedule. But today, Goldstein says teacher schedules have mostly returned to pre-pandemic rigidity. The striking thing that's happened over the past few years is that almost every other career that teachers are qualified for has gone dramatically more flexible, and teaching has not, Goldstein says. Part of why Goldstein left his teaching job 5 years ago is that he became a father and needed a schedule that allowed for more time at home. The latest Aussie data shows that retention rates were lowest among teachers with 2 to 5 years experience, which Goldstein says may be because some of those teachers are getting married and starting families. He says that there are ways to make teacher schedules more forgiving while maintaining a 5-day work week. For example, schools can make time for high school students to do vocational programming and internships during school hours, while younger children can do more project-based learning, leaning on existing partnerships between schools and DC area nonprofits. That would give educators more free periods to lesson plan, have meetings, and work from home. There's really exciting opportunities for both students and educators, Goldstein says. Those take planning and the system actually supporting the work of schools to redesign. Thompson says some of his colleagues work more than 8 hours a day. While he's paid by the hour, he says any work he might do after 5 that doesn't involve interacting with students doesn't count toward his paid overtime hours. These schedules feel even less manageable to younger teachers who tend to have lower salaries. He says it's also not uncommon for teachers to need another job on the side to make ends meet. As of fiscal year 2019, the starting salary for a new DCPS teacher with a bachelor's degree could be as low as $56,313 a year. Thompson says raising these salaries is key to retention in a city with a steep cost of living. In his email statement to DCist FAMU, Farabee says DCPS is proud to be one of the highest paid school districts in the country. Number 2, making teacher evaluations less punitive. An early 2020 survey by the State Board of Education shows that for DCPS teachers, the primary departure driver was the impact evaluation system. Enacted in 2009 by then DCPS Chancellor Michelle Rhee, Impact was one of the first evaluation systems in the country to determine a teacher's salary and job security based on students' standardized test scores. So we don't have tenure in DCPS, just so you know. The system aimed to root out or impact out ineffective teachers while boosting retention for effective teachers by paying them more, but many teachers says that's not how it works in practice. Impact is a punitive system rather than a supportive system, O'Leary of the DC State Board of Ed says. Margaret Thomas says she's heard of many stories from teachers whose scores would vary dramatically depending on their administrators, including veteran teachers. It works to get rid of teachers, but for building capacity, it's not, she says. The tool has been weaponized too much. In response to concerns from the Washington Teachers Union, Farabee announced a review of impact in 2019. As part of that review, DCPS partnered with American University School of Education, which later published a 2021 report showing that impact was prone to racial bias, with white teachers receiving higher evaluation scores on average than Black or Hispanic teachers. Margaret Thomas says evaluators also observe teachers in unannounced sessions for about 30 minutes, too brief, teachers say, to fully capture what they do in a day. Burke says she began teaching high school in DC 14 years ago when impact was still new and her first evaluation scores were not good. It was really stressful for me, Burke says. I thought, oh, should I quit teaching entirely? I don't want to be in a job I'm bad at. Maybe this isn't the thing for me. Burke says she was lucky to find a mentor in her department chair who encouraged her and told her she was on the right track. But mentorship isn't guaranteed for teachers, and Burke said being reduced to a score can be pretty demoralizing. Most teachers, about 60% as of 2021, did feel impact helped their growth to some extent, but there was wide consensus that the system needed change. Following a review, Farabee said that he would not get rid of impact, but would be interested in reforms. Should it remain in place, Burke says the teachers union wants the evaluation to come with readily available professional development. Talked about this already. They also want evaluators to measure student success without relying on standardized testing. Standardized tests can be biased, Burke says. They're important for a lot of reasons, but they're not necessarily a great indicator of what a teacher has really done for a student or for a class. Moore says an effective mentorship program is one of the best ways DCPS can retain teachers. Ultimately, Goldstein says what matters most to students is that teachers and principals they trust and have built long-term relationships with. School stability is the foundation of school success, Goldstein says. Okay, number 3, I think this is now, securing a union contract. So, talked about this already, and I won't get into it, basically, since we talked about that, since we technically have one.
Yeah.
But obviously, the big issue is, with higher cost of living, not getting a raise, basically. Actually, I'll go back for a second, because there was a couple of things I want to say. But sorry, all of that. There we go. So this is the last part. We've waited too long. Goldstein says teachers have been putting forward solutions for years. We've waited too long, he says. We just need policy leaders to really seize the moment and not be afraid to tackle a problem and listen to students and teachers and parents and families about the solutions. If DC sticks to the status quo, Thompson says teachers will continue to leave after 2 or 3 years. Teachers will get burnt out. Young teachers will begin to get burnt out. They continue to get burnt out, he says. Brittany Richardson says that when she left her previous school, there was not enough therapy in the world for her to stay. The kids were coming with so much trauma, and the school was not supporting them and unpacking the trauma, so the trauma got unpacked on us, she said. It takes a toll on you. Moore says teachers may be leaving, but it's inaccurate to say DC is facing a teacher shortage. There are more than enough qualified people in this field, Moore says. It's just they gotta put some respect on our name.
The Birdman.
Yep. So just real quick. There we go. So this in the short of it is our agenda. This is the things that we work on. So these are basically our demands, you could say. So one, treating teachers as professionals, approve new contract for paraprofessionals and aides, institute a million salary scale above a DC living wage for charter school teachers and never for teachers' aide support positions, greatly reduce standardized testing, trust teachers with formative assessments, curriculum, and planning, and let teachers teach. Number 2, recruit, retain, diversify. Greatly expand, grow your own program funding, especially with low-cost local education preparation providers. Provide student loan repayment assistance. Provide home ownership and rental assistance. Focus on representation gaps, landlay educators, black males, etc. Pass Data Warehouse Amendment Act, providing detailed annual data on who is leaving and why to target solutions. Funny enough, we don't have that data. Like, if teachers leave, we don't necessarily know why, or if we ask for it, it takes forever and a day to get it. But having that data readily available so that adjustments can be made. Number 3, supporting educator wellness and adapt to changing nature of work. Fund flexible scheduling to allow schools to design and implement approaches that provide teachers more time for planning, collaboration, remote work, while providing students exciting enrichment opportunities to deepen learning. Locally funded educator wellness school-based partnerships. Guaranteed mental health days for all educators. Expand community school model and school-based mental health for school students and teachers, staff. And then number 4, invest in teacher growth. These are the demands that I work on specifically. Replace the DCPS impact teacher evaluation system with a growth-based system like peer assistance and review. Eliminate statistically rebuked value-added measures. Implement assessed mapping, teacher and staff-led PD. Provide floating PD hours for teachers as a right. And then provide opportunities for leadership, especially for teachers of color, not just academic leadership. So, all in all, that's us. And that's me. And this is the work. This is the core of my work that I do, part of my day and part of my time, mostly of it, like to supplement, my teaching. So that's kind of the things that we work on. And like I said, I'm actually glad that I do this in a lot of ways because it helps me to think about in terms of what we talk about on here, on how to do things on a local level, and then organizing in the way that you can kind of elevate them to higher ups. Well, I'm not state, but like in my district, but then in thinking in terms of how can you branch that out into more federal, opportunities, especially for progressive changes in education. So I think this has definitely been a way for me to kind of think about that in terms of what we kind of talk about in INN and kind of what we kind of share in independent media. So like I said, I am very proud and blessed to be a part of this organization. And like I said, we need your help for me to be able to do this work, and then other teachers who are willing to do this work. So, but yeah, that's all I got. And like I said, if you want to donate, if you can, we'll more than appreciate it. As I said, I don't get any of this money directly. This will go to organization, and this will go to the things that we need to ensure that we're able to continue this work. And honestly, really, like, I would love to see kind of what we talk about kind of be elevated more, to thinking more on the federal discourse in terms of thinking about education. So, I mean, I live in DC, so the opportunities that I have for that, I think, are much more greater here. But at least for a minimum, it gives me the opportunity to think about all this stuff in terms locally and kind of activating the people on the local level in power to be able to push these policies. So yeah, being able to do that and kind of helps me and my thought process here.
So links for the donation and stuff are in the chat as well as in the description below, especially if you're watching this as a clip. and link to the Empowered website, EmpowerEd, right? EmpowerEd.
So, I think that. So I'll put the website in the chat, but it's weareempowered.org. Yeah. So so if you want to put that in the chat, or if you want to go to the description, you can find the link there and learn more about what we do and how you can support, our work. And like I said, if you can't give tonight, if you're wanting to, you have until the end of the year. And again, this is non-profit, so that could be a write-off for you for your taxes. So win-win for everybody. And then, as I also said, if you decide, obviously one-time donations are great, but if you decide to become a recurring donator, that would be awesome. So we have a steady flow of income, but also Facebook Meta is matching your donation up to $100 if you do that. So if you decide, if you decide to give $25 a month, that will total $50.
Okay.
So that's how it works. $50
Cool.
total. That works. So yeah. Thank you guys for this special Giving Tuesday stream. Glad to do it. Excited I have the forum to kind of do this. Thank you to Reef and Indy and the INN fam for allowing me to do this. And thank you guys for tuning in on a Tuesday night. I know you probably were other people that are worth watching, and shout out to them. We love them too. But thank you for at least kind of listening to me and kind of the things that I'm passionate about. But also just kind of shows, and I never say that I am an expert in all of this, but I can kind of back up the stuff that I say in light of the fact that I do this work. I think especially being a teacher, just being in the thick of it, having that understanding of what the working class I am the working class, so or at least I consider myself that. So I know what many of you guys go through. Crab, if you want to help me with that, I'll be more than happy to jump down and see. I will take care of my boxes. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I think that's kind of more the running gag right now. But
coming up next, Tara Reid at 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. We're talking to some of those people on the other side of the globe, so time zones are always funky with that. But if you're up that late, check in.
We will have our regularly scheduled INN news time tomorrow night at 9.
Yep.
And then anything else?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I liked having the new stuff to play with on stream. I think it looked far better. But anyway, yeah, I think that's it. As always, fam, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night.
And thank you.
Thank you.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.